This is a test of the City of Palatka audio system. This is a test of the City of Palatka audio system.
Mrs. Krantz?
Yes, Commissioner?
I didn't have any audio.
Yeah, we're muted. We were waiting on Commissioner Borum. Please hold.
Okay, absolutely. So let's go and get some of these. I'm doing that. Totally understand.
I'm missing a piece of information. Do you have an extra copy of the ARPA spreadsheet in?
It's attached to the back,
Last page.
last page.
I got good eyesight.
I mean, you can't read it, but it's there.
That, whoops.
So you make it larger, so we can read it. Oh, you're so smart. Oh, look what I was doing.
But we're at there.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to call the workshop meeting to order. It's a special workshop on June 16, 2023, and we're after 3 p.m. Ms. Krantz, could you read the notice, please?
Thank you. To Commissioners, Tammy McCaskill, Will Jones, Rufus Borum, and Justin Campbell, you are hereby notified that a special called meeting of the Palatka City Commission is hereby called, workshop. I said meeting, sorry, force I have it. Called for June 16, 2023 at 3 o'clock at City Hall, 201 North 2nd Street, Platte, Florida, 32177. The purpose of the workshop is to discuss the strategic plan, major project updates, and American Rescue Plan Act ARPA projects. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Signed, Roberta M. Correa, Mayor.
Thank you. Pastor Mulberry, could you please lead the invocation?
Yes. Good evening. Father, we thank you once again for this opportunity to come together. We thank you, dear God, for your goodness all day. We bless you now for your greatness. I pray, God, that you will bless this session as they come together, the workshop. I pray that you will give wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and what is necessary to move forward. We thank you for all that you're doing in the city and for what you're going to do. And even now, God, we give you praise and glory in all things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Prince. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Commissioner Tammy McCaskill.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Campbell,
Present.
Commissioner Will Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Rufus Borum is in transit, Mayor Robbie Correa.
Present.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
we'll note it for the record.
I'm going to open the floor up to public comments. Your comment cards, please fill one out. They are right here next to the door, the yellow cards. Even if you're going to speak to a specific topic, it would be helpful to fill them out now and put that appropriate agenda item number rather. 3 minutes, please. And no action will be taken on these items. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, close public comment. Agenda items. Number 1 is discussion of strategic plan and major project updates. Ritter?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'd like to take the opportunity, I know some of you have already heard, but for the benefit of the public and to provide confirmation, I did get confirmation from our lobbyists earlier today that it is confirmed that our $13 million appropriation requests have been approved with the governor signing the veto and our projects not being on that list. So to remind everybody, that is $2.5 million for sewer main and manhole improvements, $7 million for potable water main line replacement, $1.5 million for St. John's Avenue improvements, and $2 million for affordable housing. So
Thank
that's
you.
great.
That's wonderful. Senator Hudson for really supporting us and moving that forward.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody who took the time to actually go up there and meet with the representatives, including Ms. Tucker specifically for her work.
Thank you.
Okay, so you want me to start off the conversation for strategic plan?
Please.
Okay, in your packet, we included the strategic plan. You'll notice towards the end of that were the 9 goals that were adopted. We wanted to give these to you in advance so you would have an idea of the goals that you adopted. And you have staff here as well as a few other individuals, Mark Litton from the chamber. We're here and ready to speak to these specific goals and give you updates on what has been accomplished. There are a few of these where the city is not the lead agency. So for instance, improved broadband internet access, that's goal number 7. So I know Mark is here, and if you wanted to talk about that one specifically later, he could tell you, I believe the committee is the LTPT. Thank you, I passed the test. And they've been working towards that effort. But we don't have a presentation. This workshop was called by you, the commission, and we're just here and ready to answer any questions about any of these specific goals.
And it's our hope at the end of this, although until Commissioner Warner arrives, we don't have form to go. But it's our hope at the end of this discussion and presentation that we can give some direction.
So we put them in this order on purpose. These are obviously your goals that you have in your strategic plan. And then you have the update and discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act funds and projects. And specifically under item number 2, ARPA, there are some categories where we have not encumbered or contracted any of those funds. And you have to have those contracted by next year. So it could be that your discussion on item number 1, which is the strategic plan and those specific goals, might lead into utilization of some of those unallocated ARPA funds if you have other priorities.
Okay, so we'd like to proceed.
As we talk about this, and I think that Mr. Mark, you said that you'll come up. If I'm right, you said that Mr. Mark will come up and speak to some of these goals and where we are in the process.
Specifically goal number 7.
Okay.
Right.
Now, I want to ask this, the form, I know that you may have already provided the form that we spoke about, speaking of the party.
Okay.
And then spoke with Ms. Jonathan about the form of the allocated, the ARPA funding. Am I right?
Yeah.
And what we had, what we started out with,
Mm-hmm.
what we've already used, and what we have available.
Yes.
So Jonathan then just spoke about and made reference to, maybe we want to consider what we have. Do
Mhm.
you have that form available so that you can share with us and we
Yes.
have this conversation?
Right. So we do, all of us have it, but it's just kind of difficult to see it. It's your last page.
Is that what you just said? It's kind of difficult.
Yes, and I've asked her to amplify it on the screen if possible. My staff just gave me a big one, so I can personally read it.
Will it be asking too much of using? I would like,
You would like it to be, okay, that would be fine.
it would have been great to have.
Yeah,
Because I think you can kind of blow it up on.
you
expand it on top.
can, okay.
Yeah,
So I just needed it to see it better.
Yeah.
Okay, and to do it real quick, from looking at we call it and thanks to Jill and Jackie and all that assistance. But the form or the printout is showing the approved allocations by the commissioners. And that equaled that 5,234,421. Oh, I was speaking to the mic. And there were a few budget amendments, basically moving some funds from the granular activated carbon filter project, and also took 34,000 from St. John's, and instead allocating to 800 MHZ radios, 110,000 more, and the GIS, John's downtown potable, 39,000, and GIS Palatka Heights. So that was 35,000. So that's the budget amendment that took place. Of that 5,234,000, to get to the crux of it, 1,107,000 is currently encumbered. But we have actually spent 2,362,000. And that money primarily has been spent 827,000. Thank you, Marsha. Okay, so 827,000 for St. John's Avenue to Mosley, 327,000 in those earbacks, et cetera. Okay. And so to the very bottom, the funds that we have available that have not yet been spent and could possibly be considered for reallocation, total amount is 1,764,705.53.
Mayor, Commissioners, if there's a specific goal that you would like staff to give you an update on, specifically what's been accomplished, what's in progress, I mean, we're here and we can speak to those. We just ask that you tell us which ones you want to talk about.
Okay, and for those, anybody, I don't know, either of the other commissioners that are zooming, please. Okay, specifically for mental health support, public health, those would be services contracted to another agency. What would be, explain those, because I wasn't here when this was about, explain those to me. Please.
So you're referencing the ARPA allocation, mental health support,
Yeah.
$100,000. Staff hasn't been given any directive on what that means or how to allocate those funds.
And we allocated $100,000 for that, right?
Yes.
The same for public health as well, no directed at this point.
No.
I think that's something that we definitely need to address and look at, and that's something that's been brought forward several times. But which of the goals would that fall under? I like to have 9 goals here, but I also want us to think about our strategic plan and the goals that we have on there, and making sure that we can put all the goals here that we want. That's the power that we have, but not putting so many goals under our strategic plan that we can't feasibly accomplish these goals in a sensible amount of time. So I want to hear from the team and input from the community. Which ones that we need to, I know that we're working the blight, and I know how we number them, and that I think that was very smart, because we do have a right to blight, or a blight to blight, or whatever that number one that we're working on. But we need to kind of step back, look at what we have, know that we have only a pocket full of money, a pocket of money that we're working with is $1 million that we have left. We've been moving money here and moving money there and moving money around. We just need to take a really good look at what we're dealing with. But my priority now, and I hope that's the same with the commission, is addressing these mental issues where they fall, not having so many goals that we're all over the place that we really can't move forward.
Believe it or not, I'm working.
Go ahead, Commissioner Jones.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner McCaskill. However, the city manager asked about what direction that we would like to see that we head in. And as I'm looking at the sheet, I'm looking at some areas where I feel before there was a need, a great need, and I think we have done a great job with like vocational education for COVID-19, which is no longer probably needed at this time at the cost of $80,000 to be allocated. And housing repair, that's something I think we need to also visit, because we're not an agent that's built for housing repair. That's going to like agencies like SHIP program and such, or Habitat, which we're not an agent for that. We put $50,000 also aside for mobile showers for the homeless. And I didn't think that the commission was ready to move forward with that. I don't know, but we do need to address it versus just having that money sit there. And as we all know, we were talking about the street resurfacing project, and we didn't have enough money for it. If we reallocate those funds from those projects towards the street resurfacing project, I think that would actually help us with that project, because we didn't have any money, but now reallocation could be the answer for that. I don't know how the commission feel about it. And also another area is the broadband. We're also not the lead in this county for broadband, and the county commissioners are already working on that project. So to duplicate the efforts, I don't know if we want to do that, but I just wanted to point those areas out where those funds could be reallocated. And if possible, I would ask the commissioner, let's consider that at those areas at this time, while we're speaking on these topics of reallocation and what we could do with the funding that we earmarked previously.
We got resurfacing, Mr. Griffith. Is that something?
It is, we would ask the commission to talk about the areas that they want to see that resurfacing occur. And then staff would go back and look at planned capital projects and make sure that if we need to advance some work. Because as you know, and I think Commissioner Jones is very familiar with this. You know, when we started to work on the north side, we got into some additional utility repairs that needed to occur. So we would need to look at the available funding and see how far it would take us, including the utility repairs, so that we wouldn't be able to put it back up. But yes, it is an eligible expense.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Borm is present for the record.
Okay, Commissioner Barnes, I can see that. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'll think you're clear. Do we want to have, Mr. Lynn come up and speak about the broadband, since there was some discussion about not having that as a project restriction or need? Mr. Lynn, could you please come and tell us why?
Thank you for allowing me to speak, address our local planning, technology planning team. County has been working on this with DEO for well over a year. My first day on the job here back in August, I was pulled into a LTPT meeting. So far, there have been, well, let me go back. Last year, and when Congress passed the 3 stimulus packages over $1 trillion. Thank you. Sorry about that. $800 million was designated for the state of Florida. Department of Economic Opportunity created the Access 67 project to try to bring broadband or an internet connection to every residence in the state of Florida. Primarily focusing on the rural counties where there is underserved or non-served residences. We have a number of residences in the county that cannot get the internet, and we have some that are using dial-up.
And some that can't afford it.
And some that can't afford it, correct. So we have been working with some of the major ISPs, Comcast, AT&T, Cox Communications, helping them apply for grant money through DEO. There have been 2 rounds of funding. We did receive funding that Comcast and AT&T received several months ago in the first round, and I think 62 miles of broadband line was designated to be installed with that grant money. And as far as we know, that's happened because we're seeing the maps where the areas that are served are changing. Some people don't believe the maps. A lot of times our LTPT meetings digress into, well, I don't have it at my house, and I don't have it here. I know somebody can't get it. And so we actually had our most recent meeting yesterday at the Chamber of Commerce, and there's another funding round, a 3rd round of funding that's going to come available. Right now, we have no money from the state or the county, so we've been kind of doing what we can free, do more volunteer things. And so we have done a survey. It was online, which I was questioned because I said, we want to know the people that don't have the internet, how they're going to get online to fill out the survey. But a lot of people have cell phones and they can access the survey that way. We're talking about setting up booths at Walmart, some of the larger big box retailers around the county, so that we can sit there and ask people, give us your address, we can plug it into the survey online portal, and we can find out whether they have internet or not. And then we can pinpoint that dot and let the Comcast and the AT&Ts and the Cox communicate. Cox is out in the Hawthorne area. So we can let them know, here's areas, the neighborhoods that can't access the internet. So, but we continue to work on it. We're hoping there'll be a funding round where there will be some admin money available I think the county wants to push it out of the county, so it would be, will run a little more efficiently. The thought is bring it in-house in the chamber, but again, it's just ideas. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them. Commission or residents.
Do you have any questions? You reiterated several times that there is no money. And Commissioner Jones is suggesting there, you know, that perhaps that's used about ARPA funds to allocate some towards that. I'm wondering if the need, not necessarily that we're going to need for broadband for folks, but to offset with those people that can't afford it. I don't know if this funding could be used to offset some of that. And again, we would have distributing it, we would want the resources to do that, I realize that. But if there's another agency, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the Federal Communications Commission has an affordable connectivity program whereby people are eligible for a $30 discount on a monthly basis. And they've got a long list of eligibility, which includes if you're already on SNAP, Medicaid, federal housing assistance, et cetera. So
Comcast has a program.
That's somewhat. So
Yeah, we're not looking to, as a committee looking to pay for people's internet.
Right.
What our interest in is getting that to their home so that they can plug in to the internet. I think, you know, like I said, there's no money, and the state has not allocated any money for admin. Mayor, you're on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. You know, we're understaffed and underfunded. And if you wanted to maybe talk with the county about a joint partnership to help fund a part-time position that could, you know, devote time and energy and resources to the effort, it's something to consider. I'm not asking, I'm just putting it on the table.
thank you. I'm just trying to see if Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Campbell have their hand up, and maybe not. What else about broadband and other questions?
Well, I'm just trying to catch up on you said that you have not done a survey, you don't know.
No, we haven't. We actually have gotten almost 600 responses from county residents.
Well, what's your target areas?
Yeah. The areas that don't have it.
This is the county.
Yeah, that's right. The whole, I mean, there are communities or neighborhoods in the city of Palatka that cannot get the internet.
I understand, but what I'm saying is there are areas where Comcast, all of the major providers, some of them don't have service in those areas, so the remote areas is, I'm just trying to.
That's mainly the target area.
In
Areas. I mean, there's a lot of them, unfortunately.
like Interlochen, Satsuma, those areas,
Yes,
and
west and south mainly, and Barden. Those areas are Boswick.
so you're asking for funds from the city.
No, I'm not asking. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just saying there could be a conversation held between city, county, Interlochen, city, Crescent City, to maybe pull some resources.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, I do know that the school district does have different access points throughout the county for people who do not have
Right.
broadband, and they also provide the cell phone with the hotspots.
Right.
For students as far as their education.
Yeah, the school district's involved on our committee,
Right.
and they've been very helpful.
So we just need to figure out, between all of the agencies, what people can contribute to see how we can meet the needs and what we're looking for in this. So you're on the way there. I do know that, they've been talking about the broadband thing for a number of years since I've been on the committee, since 2015.
It picked up a lot of steam when Congress passed the
Right.
stimulus bill last year and then allocated so much money to the state of Florida. And then they created the Access 67 program. And actually, County Commissioner Larry Harvey is the chair of Access 67. So that always bodes well for us when we have the local voice leading a statewide effort.
You know, we have like the lambda lines that run, north and south and both, you know, east and west coast or whatever, and they serve as the educational, I think it's research that they do, and they're trying to tie what they're missing is the link in between that service with inland areas. So that's what we're missing. So, yeah, we got a lot of opportunity there, so appreciate y'all all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
I think we're back to, because Commissioner Jones suggested that perhaps the category on that and broadband and the phones was something that may not be necessary. Is that what I understood?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Commissioner Jones, sorry, misunderstanding.
Yes, I could clarify. As Commissioner Borum explained it eloquently, there's other resources for broadband throughout the county is what I'm saying. And that $250,000 go a long way in our efforts of resurfacing and taking care of a problem that just come up recently with these sinkholes within the city to go out and repair much needed repair that we didn't have the funding for. Just asking or just mentioning that there's some funds there that we could reallocate. Commissioner Borm, I know you were out, so that was my statement on it. And the gentleman asked about assisting the rest of the county, and these are some efforts that we wouldn't be able to get that $250,000 from any other agency in the county to help us with our roads in the city.
Okay, with that said,
I'm in agreement with that.
now,
I'm so sorry. No, we want to stick to that.
that's what, well, my question was, would that all of that spend, is that someone I want to move that funding to something else and not have that for in line?
It can change. I mean, just like Commissioner Jones was saying, if these are things that we just it was not hard stone, so we can move.
Right,
that
I know that, but
to an area.
yeah, that's the wish of the.
That's my wish.
Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner Jones, any thoughts?
I'm having a slight problem hearing, but could you repeat the question?
The question was, do we want to eliminate the broadband line item and move that funding to another category? You suggested, road repairs, utility repairs, and resurfacing, for example. So do we want to, first of all, eliminate the broadband line item and use that money funding?
At this time, that's what I'm asking. I spoke with the interim city manager, and we discussed that these, he identified areas, and these are the areas that we identified in our conversation. And I wholeheartedly agree that those are some areas that could fix our immediate issue, or at least could help. If the commission, it's up to the commission of how much, but definitely because there are other resources out there that could address that problem, but we don't have additional resources within the city to address our road and street problem right now. So I just want to put it out there for the commission to consider those areas that I mentioned.
City manager.
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioners, it may be best if we're kind of into the ARPA discussion, and we don't have to stick to 1 and 2. If you guys have further questions about the strategic plan as we move through these items, but it may be best just to take each one by one. And you can't take formal action today, but you could give general consensus direction on each one, and then we can place this on the upcoming agenda to reallocate the dollars.
Okay. So with that said, housing repair,
We can keep that.
And again,
That's my point, but you got. you wanna hear from everybody.
Yeah, Commissioner Warren, Stone brought that up, before you came in about the house and repair.
Would you like me to speak?
Yes, you sure can. Go ahead. Go ahead and, bring Commissioner Warren up to break, because I think I have a couple of questions about that.
Okay, yes, it appears that it was allocated $498,000 that for housing repairs. And as we researched it, the city is not in the business of repairing houses. And historically in the past, there have not been an allocation for that. And due to the fact, again, there's other agencies like the SHIP program that gets their money elsewhere, and people in the city, within the city, is eligible for those kind of funds. Again, those are funds that could be utilized for the street resurfacing projects, are reallocated to another area. Again, I would request that it goes towards the emergency need of the street repair and resurfacing project. Commissioner Bourne, so, I would request that we reallocate those funds to that general direction.
Also, the community, block development grant, Habitat for Humanity, there are other resources and entities that do help in that area. But I do want to be mindful, because I may have a question with Jonathan about making sure that when we allocate these funds, that it's not going solely to resurface the streets. And I do have a question about that, maybe that's something we talked about earlier. So it's good that you're identifying these things that we may not need the funding for that particular item, but I want to be mindful about being top heavy and reallocating these funding from reallocating these funding, the funding to just one particular source. So that's what I wanted to add before you comment, Commissioner Boone, if that's okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Boone.
You
One
know,
second.
well, basically, I just think, I talked to, other cities and what they were doing with some of their funding, and some of them have allocated it for like just housing repairs or whatever, things that happen, they have criteria, and their city is not allocating those funds, they're using another source to be able to do that, and the city is out of it, but they have the criteria, parameters to be able to meet those things. So I think if I requested the information yesterday from Orange Park, I'll just say Orange Park. They'll be sending that information, so I think we don't want to zero this out. If we want to reduce some of the funding, I think to reallocate somewhere else, I wouldn't mind that, but I don't want to zero that out to be able to help with some of the, not saying that we're going to go and repair people's houses, especially the ones that's able to afford it, but there's ways that we can use this funding to help the people who are impacted on storms.
and I also think when we talk about the Blight program, and if there's somebody elderly or disabled that doesn't have a financial wherewithal, and it's getting the code and enforcement,
Yeah.
lien, those were also the people we talked about finding ways to assist. Obviously, we have to be some guidelines of that, and again, one of the agencies such as Habitat, whatever, maybe could administer whatever we specify, but I just think again, we should keep that money there for now.
If I may, I'm actually in agreement with both Commissioner McCaskill as well as Commissioner Borum. Even though there are other resources that we have within our area, how many of those resources are actually being given to those residents actually in the city? I would be interested in knowing that prior to us completely zeroing out and not giving anything to that housing line. I'm in favor of reallocating some of the funds. However, I would like to keep some of the funds there to see what it is that we can do. And I would want us to keep in mind that the majority of us, when we came up with this list, were on the commission at the time. So apparently it was of some importance, or it would not have been listed. I know Mayor was not there at the time, but the rest of us was there. So at that moment, there had been a need for it. So I want us to take that in consideration and be reminded of that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to small businesses again, not being on the commission at that time. I'm not sure specifically what the commission was thinking with that allocation in terms of existing small businesses.
That's another line where, again, small businesses in the city of Palatka, we've had, we just heard the small business, WBC came and did a report, our last meeting. And again, like Commissioner Jones had been talking about, some of the people get to the finish line, will get to the finish line, but they can't cross it. So I think if we can look at ways that we can assist or help businesses, not just to just dole out the money, but they need to have a good solid plan to be able to use those funds for a cause that will either help sustain their business or help them to become, get them off the ground.
And now you're talking about something like an educational component, or I don't know what you're, because 100,000 will go far.
No, this could be this, some of them might not need.
I'm just asking for an example.
We can, what I'm saying is 100,000 don't go far, but for the businesses inside the city of Palatka that may need some assistance or a new business inside the city of Palatka that may need funding. I think, those are the type of things that help. And again, I'm getting some feedback from Orange Park, who has already doled out some of their funds, and they have parameters around how they issue those funds. So if I know we'll probably have time to be able to look at that. So we don't want to make a solid decision on that. I'll just wait for the information to come in with y'all.
That's fine. I was just asking for clarification when the commission put this on the list, what they were thinking.
Okay,
So I'm not
So-
supposed to.
and you're asking a very good question, and but of course, my memory isn't that great. We did hold a community event where they came in and the Martin and gave some input when we went around. We did a carousel event where they did some,
Yeah, I
some
was
of
there.
it.
I did that.
Okay, so we did use that as well. I can't really remember. So now I know that a lot of us may be exhausted with having these workshops, but it would have kind of been great. Maybe having some of that stuff compiled on a little list in front of us to help us fresh out. I really can't tell you what you can.
I mean, the strategic plan is part of the package, and that's what you're referencing when the strategic plan.
We did, when we compiled a lot of this stuff and a lot of these priorities, I do think that's where we get some of the ideas from. When we were saying, what were we thinking when we said that? Because we did get some of that. I'll tell you what, when we were talking about the mobile showers, I know we're not there yet, and I just don't hit in on it. I do remember a specific member in the community was very adamant about the $50,000 for the mobile showers, and she was there in the meeting, and we got those things from there. So I kind of wish we had, again, which we didn't get that direction, so we did not give them direction. But at the time, we would have been thinking, we would have said, hey, can we get those ideas off of the sheets, off of the things that compile them together so that we'll know and had them before us in this meeting. So we'll remember wholeheartedly where did we get these ideas? So kind of reluctant right now, because I don't want to take everything off the table because we did get a lot of this from the community.
And I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner McCaskill. And I simply say that even with the funding there that we're currently talking about, a lot of that was driven by small business owners who actually sat in our meetings and got up before us time after time after time. So again, I have people who's inboxing me, emailing me, calling me. They're waiting for this to become available. So I don't want to see this taken off at all. If anything, I would like to add to it.
Well, that's not, as a small business owner, my tendency is to add shaping with there. And I understand. Also, when some of the road work was done in the past, when we were doing the intersections, many of the businesses, at least downtown, and this is obviously a city, but many downtown lost quite a bit of money during that time. And maybe even if they had a small amount, they would have felt a little more supported in buying, but that's how we're gonna have more of that work. So that's just an example of maybe it could have been help at that time. Do you remember anything specific? Mr. Griffin?
I don't know what sheets you're referencing. I do have the strategic plan in front of me and specific to housing. And you have to remember that these goals are intended to be somewhat broad to allow for you to develop more specific policy and direct staff. But one of these was to develop a strategy to assist struggling homeowners and support aspiring home buyers. Often homeowners who are elderly or have very low incomes do not have the financial or other resources to maintain their property. This can be a tragedy for the homeowner and become an issue for the neighborhood. The city should work with nonprofit, USDA, SHIP programs, and religious organizations to help these homeowners avoid the legal code enforcement process, stay in their homes with increased quality of life, and safeguard their family wealth. Now, I do want to point out, just from a staff perspective, related to the road project, it's important that you recognize you need to get to $1 million if you're going to be able to do a complete project. Setting that aside, when it comes to the ARPA allocations, December 2024 is when we have to have the funds contracted. So that means we need to be in the process of spending those funds. We need to have decided what we're doing and how we're going to do it and with whom. It's the latter part of that statement that your staff is struggling with right now. You know, what it is we're doing and with whom. We don't have the staff or programs for assisting struggling homeowners with renovations and repairs. Now, your code enforcement staff can refer people to those nonprofits and to USDA and SHIP, but that's not under our normal purview. So what we're looking for today, and we understand that we can't get through all of these. It's a big discussion. Maybe a little bit of direction on some of these things that you do want to keep in here. So, for instance, if housing repair is one of those that you feel strongly about, or a small business, give us some ideas of programs that may be palatable to you, or agencies that you want us to reach out to so that we can maybe figure out the nuts and bolts of actually how to spend the money. That's where we're at right now.
I understand that. So when we came up with these, I think staff, everybody was there. I wasn't given a rich thing, and we wouldn't even had it on there. We all work together collaboratively with these priorities. And if we would have given that and given some direction then, I think that we would have.
Well, and we still have time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to, put you in a feeling of distress. So if housing repair is something that the commission feels strongly about, let's tell us some of the ideas, how you would like to see the money spent, how you would like to see that assistance go to the public.
I feel I don't know if it's just me. I just feel like we're going back to ground zero, and I think I'm in agreement once again with Commissioner McCaskill. It's like we're sitting here having this conversation like we haven't had these conversations before, and where we didn't put our ideas all out on the table. So I guess my question is, once we give direction, like are we giving direction in this meeting, or are we going to come together and meet again? Because again, I just feel like we're going line by line and nothing is getting done.
We're probably going to come together again, but my thought was, I know we're trying to go in order, but are there some things we would just take off as line items and put that money aside that may go to something else, so we know what to focus? Because, and can we accomplish certain things like the mobile shop for the homeless? That seems fairly self-explanatory that could just be done. As far as purchasing that, yeah.
I would ask you, who's gonna own it, who's gonna maintain it? Who's gonna open it up for the homeless, where would it be stored? Are we duplicating an effort that First Presbyterian Church is already, working towards?
Big homies actually have mobile showers as well.
Okay.
So then maybe we don't need that. That's what I want.
And these are very good questions, and I'm so glad that this is a workshop. You are asking phenomenal questions, but I'm gonna go back to when we were in Price Martin and Miss and the lady was sitting there and the former mayor, and we had a workshop. And these questions were asked. She was very adamant, and we agreed that this would be something that we would put on there. But, and I know that, I don't know, Jonathan, if you were there, but these are some good questions, and I don't think if we would have had somebody with institutional knowledge that you have. And maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. I'm not saying that the people that were there did not have that. Maybe they didn't think I asked those questions at the time. But if these questions would have been there, it's probably been on the sheet. Because now that you're asking these questions, it seems as if we shouldn't have had it on there. Because it's a maintenance issue now. You get what I'm saying? It's good that we can purchase these mobile showers for $50,000. How are we gonna make them? Where's the money gonna come to maintain them? How are we gonna do it? And then we just snatch it off the table.
Well, I guess because also at that time, and I'm not certain about the timelines yet, Bread of Life, First Presbyterian Church may not have had theirs at this point in time. There may have not been any in the immediate area. So it seemed like a good idea at the time. Now, since then, First Pres and Commissioner Campbell mentioned somebody else.
Big Homie, and I mentioned this during the time of the conversation, Big Homie actually opens up their facility multiple times a week to the homeless for showers.
Okay.
Maybe the question is, if the city was to purchase the showers, is it something that their agency would utilize so that the burden of maintenance wouldn't be on the city? Because you do not have a department for homeless assistance. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Mhm.
So I guess the first question is there a continued need for an additional mobile shower? And if there is there an agency that can be responsible to maintain it once it's available and have an agreement with that?
So I remember the person that really was adamant about having it. Maybe before we pull it off the table, we can get her back in here and let her speak on it because she was strong on it. She asked about it again, maybe a couple of months ago. Maybe we can invite her in and say, hey, we're talking about this. We may have an additional workshop, and I would like for her to answer the question so that at least she can feel she has some input before we pull it off the table. I'm just saying, if we're the voice for the people, and we're seeking their input, I just feel that it's no more than right to continue to allow them to give some input. I don't know how you all feel. If I'm going out and to go out and see people vote and stuff, and not just because of votes, even if I can go around people for the vote when it's time to vote, I feel I can continue to ask them for the input when it's necessary. They should have a right to give their input all the time. I just want to do that. I don't know how to risk it.
Okay, so we did jump around. I don't know. We need
I
to
just I still want to know how the rest of the commission feels about that. Should we give the people opportunity to speak on these things before we pull them?
Well,
I agree. We brought the people in to help us create the list, and we should be able to bring them back in to help us dwindle down since that time if things have changed. I agree with Commissioner McCaskill once again.
So that's moving up and we'll show them, we'll definitely say anything on the list that's either accomplished or can be accomplished pretty easily. That we will go into a discussion about, again, a lot of these things require another agency. Probably because we don't have the resources to address them, and that's also mental health support, public health, etc. So
In most cases, Mayor, that's what happens when you don't, the city doesn't have to
On your back.
provide those. So again, I've already reached out. I've heard from other cities. How they're doing, waiting on Orange Park. I've talked to, Fort Myers, and how they've done their funds. If we can just wait a couple of weeks, information will be coming in and we can have a little bit more direction. And we also have the league to depend on with Alvin Payne, in their group, how it's, they got the way they spend our funds right now in FL City's site. So those are guys that can help with these federal funds that we're getting. We've already, we've got the categories. It's already been researched and categories are here. So if guys can just hang on to a couple of weeks, we'll get some information to move forward. At least we'll have some kind of guide, additional guides.
Okay, so is there anything though on the list that we're not going to need that kind of guidance or outside support from another agency to be program? Is there anything on this, Mr. Manager, that we can accomplish at the city without moving forward with something?
The sports complex is allocated, this hasn't been encumbered yet, that would fall underneath that category. On your agenda next Thursday, related to a utility adjustment, we will have a discussion related to the application of the utility assistance. I would not be opposed to kind of giving you a little bit of a, preview of what that conversation would be. Everything else that is unencumbered, we really are going to need a little bit more specific direction on, and referencing what Commissioner Bourne was just talking about. But I can talk about the utility assistance for a second if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So there's two trains of thought here. One is you just give a base amount to every single utility customer, and it's just a subsidy on their bill. The other is, and this kind of came to light when we had a commercial account that experienced some hardship that started even before COVID and went through COVID, and they're still accruing late fees. So a discussion with Brett Dennis from the Gas Authority and Ian Atkins on this party afterwards, and even Ms. Thomas, we kind of put together a little bit of a program that wouldn't have an extreme administrative burden on your utility administration staff, because that's always a consideration as well. You don't want to have a high overhead cost associated with putting out this money on the street. So the thought was, if you had an account that experienced a hardship and was accruing late fees, and they certified that their hardship was due to COVID-19, we can prescribe that form. If they get on a payment plan minus the late penalties within a 12-month period, the city could waive the late fees and the penalties accrued to get those accounts current. And that was just one suggestion. And that would be a pretty simple program to put in place. And you could even do it in combination with the first program that I mentioned, where you just give a credit to all customers.
Well, at least that's something we can talk further about at next week and move forward with. Anything else that's pretty much addressed me direction, and we kind of added restricting a semi-new category. I also want to mention public restrooms that clean up at St. Bryant, but also with public restrooms comes the cost of maintenance, etc. But we have very few public restrooms in the city. We don't, I know I have customers that come into the market that don't have any place to go to the bathroom unless they happen to go into a restaurant. And it's a constant. They come in and ask to use the restroom. I'm not supposed to allow them to do that because of that licensing that I have. So as an example, it's just, there are no restrooms downtown now. Hopefully the ship store will open in the not too distant future, and that'll be one option, as well as the River Center. It goes way down that end of the street. That doesn't really help folks the opposite end.
Madam-
So, again, yeah. I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't know how to raise my hand on this thing. But when you're done, I have a comment. I have two statements. Interim city manager was talking about the credits for citizens of Palatka, homeowners or account holders for utilities in the utility assistant program. I think that another way we could help citizens, everybody was affected by COVID. So I think that one way or the other, anybody could kind of justify that they have been affected by the COVID-19 virus one way or the other that caused a hardship. So I wanted to introduce maybe giving a voucher to all account holders, the amount to be determined by the commission, to all account holders to give them a voucher. Let's just, for an example and for conversation wise, give them a $200, $300 voucher to go towards their utilities, city utilities. And that money could be used only for those utilities. So we're helping the account holders, and the money is actually coming right back to the city of Palatka. So I look at it as a win-win. That's on that account. I don't know how you feel, but I think that's another option. Secondly, about the restrooms, as you just stated, Hank Bryan Park is a busy park, and people play basketball out there. There's tennis courts out there. There's now new recreation playground equipment out there that we just spent money on. And there's a nice walking trail. So a lot of people and a lot of traffic is out there. In the past, there have been complaints that people would use the restroom along the tree lines out there or behind the Masonic Lodge. It's a public park. And I think there is a need for a restroom out there. And I'm glad that that is in the works right now, because I am an advocate for that one. In reference to the downtown restroom facilities, we have two facilities that are public that actually are maintained by the city, and they're available for the public. And that's at the River Center and at the boat ramp. So we do have those, unless you're talking about additional through the blocks of downtown somewhere where the merchants are. So could you clarify?
I'm talking about the one, first of all, the one at the ship store will be hopefully open soon, but it's been closed for quite some time.
Right.
So same for the River Center, which again will be open soon. When you go downtown, you're talking a long street. You have elderly folks with, by the time they get to the 700-800 block, they can't walk all the way back to the riverfront, the public restroom. So again, St. John's is a long street, and that really isn't fair, and a lot of people do bring that concern up. That's all I'm saying. I'm not advocating for it.
When you mention it's not fair, I'm not getting it. What do you mean?
I'm sorry, what?
You said it's not fair. I mean, what? I'm not getting what you're saying is not fair.
Just said it's a hardship for some people to make that
Oh,
turn to go to the bathroom, back down to the riverfront when they're on the 700, 800, 900, 1000, whatever. It's a long street.
I would have a question. Where would something even like that be put? But that's another conversation.
That's a whole other. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Along service.
Bathroom.
We're just talking about using of funds. We're not going to solve the bathroom problem here. No, we're not. So we're going to get off topic. Thank you for bringing us back.
I didn't know.
And after that.
But I didn't notice it was in business, trying to figure it out in terms of providing. I have never gone to another city that provided that. They just have it in the public parks or spaces.
That's yeah, let's not go down that. I was just asking about allocate. That's some of the funding to move to that. We're not going to determine all of that now. And we're getting off track.
I don't think.
Okay. Moving right along or not. Since are we giving staff any direction on any of these line items on how to proceed, or we're going to wait for the additional information? Is that the consensus?
I would like to. Everything. If that's okay.
We can also direct staff to work with the housing and their group. They have collected all of the information from the various cities, 411 cities that participated in ARPA, and how they allocated their funding. So there's a lot of cities who's finished with dispersing those funds, so we can learn from some of theirs, as well as we can hear from some of the ones that's in the Northeast and in forefront.
And like this card is ready to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to move on to the strategic plan? Mr. Griffith is again, the staff looking for direction on how to proceed with the strategic plan.
Again, you all requested this workshop, so I'll state, again, we got a copy of the whole plan and specifically the 9 goals. Your staff is here and can give you updates on any specific goal that you'd like.
Go ahead.
I think it would be safe to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is going to drive this strategic plan.
In some sense, yes. I mean, ARPA is, will and is helping you achieve some of these goals, but not entirely. For instance, goal number 1, addressing blighting conditions in Palatka. Some of these efforts are just ongoing operations. For instance, Mr. Cutright and his staff, one of the first bullet points talks about the recent change in code enforcement policy to be proactive. They have been, they are starting to get some muscle memory and moving through those cases and working with the magistrate, getting a lot of voluntary compliance. They even are recouping some fines, which is going back in your coffers that can be used for future abatement actions. Moving on down through that list, maybe we just need to go through each one. Evaluating blight conditions with a condition survey. This was discussed at one of our recent staff Light to Bright meetings. We are looking at allocating some funding for the CRA's consideration to do a survey on all properties within the TIF districts. That is an eligible use of TIF dollars. And that would give you kind of a baseline analysis of the condition of all those properties. And that in combination with that Light to Bright strategy and what Mr. Cutright and his staff are already doing, we'd be able to kind of work through those processes of code violations, abatements, and see if we are gaining any ground. The third category there is develop a strategy to assist struggling homeowners, support aspiring home buyers. That probably would be achieved with some of that direction on one of your ARPA items, which is housing and repair. So I'll skip over that one for the time being, and I do have it on our list of things to do to reach out from this pain. And then the fourth is determine and implement a strategy for blighted properties. We are in the process of this right now, not to sugarcoat it, but with the impending departure of this Thomas, we have decided not to file the abatement actions on 5 of the properties which were identified on the 13 properties that were priorities. Not that we're not going to do it, we're just waiting until we get additional counsel in the house. And I will provide you an update on that right now as well. The salary position is active on the city's website, posted on multiple other job boards. We've already received 3 qualified applicants. We plan to set up interviews in 2 weeks' time. So we are moving on that 4th item. It's just kind of in a holding pattern. And that is goal number 1. Do you have any specific questions related to that? We have Mr. Cutright here too, if you have any questions about code enforcement and their recent activities.
Does anybody have any questions? No, I think we're good on that. Thank you.
You just want me to go down the list then?
Yes, please.
All right, goal number 2, continue to support downtown development. So the first bullet point basically speaks to additional structure and staffing. In your recently adopted CRA plan revision, I think it was 2 years ago, one of the goals was to hire a CRA manager or director. We have not budgeted for that in the CRA yet. That is something that you as members of the CRA may direct us to do this year. In addition, that second bullet point, which is increasing public activity downtown, that can be achieved 2 ways. One is through your existing cultural department and trying to promote activities and get foot traffic down there for the benefit of those businesses. The other is through the hiring of a Main Street manager. And as previously directed at the last CRA meeting, not the last 2 meetings back, we have drafted with the public information officer a mailing that's going to go to every registered property owner in the TIF districts to survey them on their support of reinstituting the Main Street position. And we'll also put that on our other social media platforms and website to get some feedback for the CRA.
Thank you. Can that be a combined position, Main Street Program Director / CRA Director?
I believe so. It's probably a better question for the state Main Street director, but I believe so. There. Yeah. The third bullet, conduct a downtown parking study. This has not been done since 2012. Again, it's something that would most likely fit underneath the budget of the downtown TIF district. This isn't the CRA board, but it is something that, you know, in your additional capacity at a later workshop, you could direct us to include that in there.
So that's going, you said you wanted the budget money for downtown study, for the parking study?
Yeah, and I can speak to what that study would involve if you'd like me to.
Yeah, this wasn't different from what we just went through with the streetscape.
It's a little bit more involved, and it is very helpful information because what they do is they do a demand basis analysis. So they'll go in and they'll inventory all the available parking, public and private, and they also inventory all the existing uses downtown, institutional uses, government, commercial, and they do this analysis on a demand hourly basis. So you can see in real time where you have shortages of parking based upon when church is going on, when the restaurants open up, when government offices are open, and so on. So that's what that study would involve, Commissioner Moore. It would be much more involved than just doing a count and us trying to maximize parking. And they could even project out for us based on some of the planned development projects that are on the table. The fourth is just an ongoing effort. Ms. Walsh's department kind of oversees this, which is just continuing to examine the zoning code and other land development regulations and making those text amendments as necessary to facilitate further development. And I think she reported recently that she is going through the selection on continuing services for planning services. So this is something that you may see more activity on in the near future. Goal number 3.
Questions, anybody? No, public safety?
Great job. I'm prepared to answer any questions for that. You don't want to talk about the quarterly goal meetings? I've been attending. Goal number 3 under public safety, as you know, is to speak on recent activity that we've been doing here since COVID has passed. We reiterated in our community engagement, and we began getting out in the public and the community and hosting meetings and also building relations. So those were things that was discussed previously. As you all know, some of you have attended not either one of our community walks or attended one of our community engagement meetings, and can attest to the activity and information that we're receiving back from the community and also involving other departments to make sure we get those issues that are discussed in the meetings taken care of. The next one was in the next bullet, it was to encourage crime prevention through CEPTED techniques upon request from current businesses or local businesses for that service from the city. We currently have in-house, and we have had in the past officers who attended the CEPTED assessment certification classes, and they are able to conduct that. We do have in-house, and upon request, we do, as well as when we have crimes occur, we do offer that information as far as safety tips and safety evaluations for those individuals. It covers a number of different things that will decrease them being continued victimized, to provide with additional cameras, lighting, and also in a lot of local stores, you see posters that's blocking the window for visibility inside and out. And those are things that we provide to the business owner, as well as looking at residents to see what their lighting is like, if their camera systems are working, what their landscape is surrounding their house, things that will assist in decreasing their percentage of being a victim in the future. So we provide those services currently, and what we have in the public safety sector right now that in the plan is being implemented now.
Any questions?
Well, I just got a comment on that. Put a whole lot of support it, sure, because that's all part of cyber security and what they do. They use a CEPTED as well, so a whole lot of support there. It's something that we can finish. We need all things. We need all. I encourage the rest of the community to help support that. That's you know.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bridget, access to the federal housing. Funding they're going to be receiving.
Yeah, and another bullet point here is expand communication with the Palatka Housing Authority, of which you have, and there's still another pending workshop, just to provide you an update. I don't believe Ms. Krantz has received any confirmation of dates from the Housing Authority yet. Is that correct, Ms. Krantz?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But we will not forget about that one. We'll endeavor to try to get that scheduled. Determine priority for city-owned vacant properties. You have worked through a significant number of your vacant properties. You're kind of on the last batch, as you know, and those properties, the PHA expressed an interest in some of those. So I believe continuing the discussions with the PHA will bring some resolution to that item in the near future. The third is offer additional passive home ownership for low to moderate income residents. So when we submitted the appropriations request for affordable housing, we tried to leave it a little open so the commission would be able to take a little bit of latitude in how they were able to achieve increasing affordable housing in the community. So we alluded to activities such as partnering with nonprofit and for-profit organizations for the construction of affordable housing, the purchase of blighted vacant property and raising and cleaning of those properties and turning them back over to those partnerships, among other various activities. I will caution you, as always, we get these notice of awards, and then it's probably 2 years later by the time we actually have an agreement with the granting agency. So there probably is going to be a delay here before you actually see those dollars in the street. But it is a significant opportunity that we've been awarded $2 million for that effort. We'll just have to work through the logistics of working with for-profit and nonprofit organizations. But there are some other agencies out there, specifically Miami has a very robust affordable housing program where they do just that. I'm sure we can copy some of those standards and programs.
Any questions? Thank you.
Goal number 5. Ms. Gano, do you want to speak to this one or should I?
Chief, you're doing a good job up there.
Lose my voice eventually.
So we did complete the business feasibility study. As you know, the answer did come back emphatically that we were not
They did not recommend that we were ready for any type of brick and mortar or business incubator. They did have a number of recommendations though in precursors to that in terms of the result of the marketing study. There was also a portion of that effort. And a lot of their recommendations are mirrored in what you're seeing here in that of out of the Northeast Board of Regional Council. So I think that the answer for the business incubator is no, that kind of needs to go away, but some of the good elements that were identified in the market study, we need to pull in some of our other strategic objectives. Any questions or comments?
One comment, well, the business incubator, they couldn't do it, couldn't make a hard decision on implementing that because that is driven off the strategy of the city strategic plan. So that's not completely in place yet and it's finalized, and so that's why they couldn't do the business incubator, so that's.
I agree with you. That's absolutely a big part of it. It was also, there were some elements out of the marketing study too, in that, you know, Palatka, quite frankly, just hasn't quite decided what it wants to be when it grows up.
Right.
That the results from the surveys and the study that they did, it was so diverse that it didn't lend itself to, there just isn't a clear focus right now on types of business that we would want to think of. Are we going to go agricultural, rural? You know, I mean, they're just, the suggestions are all over the place. So it's a little bit more honing, instead of being omnidirectional, we can kind of get it down a little bit more pinpointed, aligned with people's objectives. There might be some value to revisit that in the future.
Another thing too, you know, it's gonna be, is it our nature, are we a fast city, or are we, once we have bass, are we a blue crab, you know, what is our aim, what we're gonna be at, so. We had a number of.
Marijuana processing.
Yeah. You gotta figure it out.
Thank you.
We're good at all of them.
To follow up on Marcia's point about what we want to do when we grow up, and that continuing services contract that we're working on right now, that is primarily to update our comprehensive. And as a huge key component of that update will be community input to help us make that decision on what we want to do when we grow up, to support our comprehensive plan and subsequent land development code and zoning changes.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Skipping over to goal number 7, it's broadband, which we've already discussed.
We did it for that year.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I got some issues. All right, so possibilities in there. So I'm excited to see this item. Actually, I think when you guys wrapped up the strategic plan, I was just coming on board. What I ask is, you know, since I've been there for the last 15 months or so, there are a lot of possibilities. I'm asking for open mind. Palatka Airport has a lot of opportunities. I'm not saying it's the biggest or will be the biggest, but based upon the resources in place, some infrastructure, there are development opportunities there, and that's really the focus. We have a new finance director on board, and you know we connected, so you can expect to see some interesting options for the airport moving forward. I think one of the key pieces is understanding what the airport is. You know, it's not just a regular city department, it is enterprise fund. And for me, you know, as the airport manager, you know, being in compliance with the FAA and FDOT is critical for you as well. So looking at it from a compliance standpoint, but also looking at it from a revenue generation standpoint. You know, what can we do to maximize revenues there? And then you transition over to how do we maximize the expense? You know, what is the true value of the airport? You know, we need to get there. So, you know, that's really where we are. And I'm glad I was given kind of opened a box here to share that. So certainly more to come.
Any questions?
You mind just talking about some of the projects that kind of would support the expansion? I mean, you've got taxiway E, private hangar development, you've always got on the table. Yeah, the prospect of commercial hangars, that you can build that, build this.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, for 28J or Palatka Municipal Airport, the next step is really focusing on accommodating the corporate users. We have a strong T hangar storage clientele customers. I believe you have, since we just completed about 6 units, new units, you have probably about 80 to 81 units that you're leasing. So that's 80 to 81 customers that aircraft owners, they're not providing necessarily commercial services, those kind of things. The next step is looking at where do we go next? And a probably ideal spot is off of Moody, right adjacent to the fire department. So that's the approach end of 27. Okay, it's the area there, it's going to require minimum amount of environmental impacts. We are working with our stakeholders in trying to evaluate how do we best go down this path. There's some information I just can't share so early in the setup here. But that's the focal point. There are areas adjacent to the terminal building. So if you're facing the terminal, to your left there or east, we're looking to put a larger kind of community-based jet center operation. So you put it in perspective, we lease facilities to someone, and it's typically about one company or so. This facility is going to be leased daily rates, monthly rates to multiple operators. So it's pretty common, and it also helps you kind of maximize, accommodating your tie down customers. Folks spending $250,000 on aircraft at a minimum, a lot of times, they don't want to sit out there in the sun. So a lot of folks wanted to be covered. So the jet center kind of complex will also accommodate other users. So that there are many times we get calls from folks in the community or folks outside the community needing meeting space. So, we're just trying to look at what are the aeronautical opportunities in terms of revenue generation and what are the non-aeronautical opportunities. So those 2 projects are really revenue driven. Obviously, coming up here in the next few months or so, we have a large project dealing with resurfacing the fuel reform area, as well as the taxi lanes on the west end of the airport. So put it in perspective, you're coming on the airport property, the facilities to the right. So each taxi lane between each facility will get milled and get replaced over. So those are opportunities. Those are opportunities for us to provide a better service that will certainly allow us to maximize revenues and rents, those kind of things. Questions?
Thank you.
Don't you have a master plan update coming up?
I'm not sure the specific dates to share right now. But there is an update that's required. It's been a while for our master plan. We'll probably come to you, well, I'm sure come to you before the master plan will come to you. We need to get ahead of it versus behind it. So in the master plan process, obviously is going to be very, very time consuming to work with as well.
The extension of the runway, is that still in place?
That's probably not a airport manager question. So I'll shift that over to the.
It is most definitely still in your capital improvement plan for the municipal airport. And we're optimistic that we're going to be able to see that to fruition sometime in the next 10 years.
For sure. Other questions?
We're all set. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Can I skip over goal number 7 now? Goal number 8, obviously you've had many conversations with the county about an urban service boundary joint planning area. Kind of put this in simple terms. This really has no teeth unless the commission decides to change the pre-annexation policy for water and sewer service. So staff would advise you that you really don't want to go to the county and have this conversation unless you have decided unanimously that you no longer want to require annexation for water and sewer past a certain point. And if that is something that you're interested in, the next step would be directing your staff to develop a map, a line in the sand, if you will, of where that annexation requirement would no longer be, a requirement for service. And it's something we can do. So tell us to do it.
Well, I know we discussed when there a date yet, meeting with the county commission, and maybe that's something we want to have. Start working on our staff to start working on in preparation. Is that something we think we should do? Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Warren, any thoughts on that? Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Campbell, any thoughts on that?
Commissioner Jones here. I think that we should just be very careful on how we annex and make certain that we are being very careful and strategic in the annexing where there will not be a heavy burden on our public services. I know we had a capacity as far as water, storage, but I think we have a responsibility to do responsible growth in annexing. That's just my comment on that.
Thank you, and I agree. I feel that that's a first step, but I think we still need that information to make an informed decision, so it'll be helpful to have that, to help to see the. It's fine.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for that direction. The last goal is something that we've had some conversations about, and it's related to, this talks about equity policies in regards to procurement processes. We've had some additional conversations about how we kind of expand our pool of qualified contractors, and we help to build the capacity of qualified local vendors to work with the city. At times they're either not qualified or they can't meet the insurance requirements or licensure requirements to work with the city. So we end up having to go outside of the city and even county to get work done. Ideally, we would be keeping as much of the funding local as possible. So in reference to this kind of equity analysis, our recommendation would be, if this is something that you still feel strongly about, we probably would look to hire a consultant to help us look at our processes and kind of give us some guidance on how to make some improvements. This isn't something that I think that we can do internally effectively. We need an outside perspective.
Any questions or thoughts?
Just a excellent move. Given local preference and seeing how we get people here locally.
I'm in agreement, I think an outside view from somebody not entrenched would be helpful to get a perspective on how you thought with that. Commissioner Campbell or Commissioner Jones, any thoughts? Okay, with that, we did address the items on the agenda. Is there anything else?
I do want to make a comment. Moving forward, when we have workshop, can we kind of come? I would like to come down off this item. I just wanna, it seems like the guidance is a failure to our community. And I would like to come down, if we can have the meeting room set up so that we can be more inviting and engaging, so that the constituents can be more united. It's almost like, I mean, I'm quite sure, just seeing some of the faces out there, I know that if you all really want to engage on a topic, you would say something. However, it just feels like as if we're in a regular meeting, and I don't feel the invite. It's almost like it's a barrier. So if it's the will of the commission, and Madam Mayor, I don't want to overstep you in this meeting with asking that, I just would like to come down off the dais next in a workshop setting.
That's exactly that for our workshop, the housing authority. I feel like it's more interactive and less intimidating.
And I think Campbell. Like he was doing.
I mean, I just think any workshop,
Yeah.
the workshop and something that looks formal. I didn't say so. Come in and be there all the time.
Commissioner Campbell, Speaker Jones, any thoughts on that?
I'm fine with that. I agree.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with all that said, anything else?
Just one item for clarification. Do you want your staff to bring back an amendment to your ARP allocations to allocate the 250,000 from broadband to road repairs?
Yeah.
Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Campbell, did you hear that?
I said yes.
Yes, today. Commissioner Campbell, what are your thoughts?
Yes.
Sounds like a yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Are we free to make comments? This is a workshop. No, I understand it's a workshop.
Pretty good. Sure, come on. Name and address, please.
Bernard Meehan, 815 Laurel Street. I guess going back to the budget portion, and Commissioner McCaskill, you spoke pretty diligently about the mobile showers. Why does the city not utilize a building down at the end of 19th Street called the Jenkins system? You've got a gym down there that's not being used, the property that's not being used. You're allocating potentially $50,000 over the course of a year. I don't think it would cost you $50,000 to set up a command center down there, whether it be once a month, whatever it is. The water's already there. You're already going to be doing maintenance on the buildings, et cetera. You've got staff in there, et cetera. I think it's a viable option to think about. Allocate, take that 50 and put it maybe into something else.
And that's why I wanted to hear input, and the person that spoke on that was very assertive and adamant and diligent in her wanting that. And that's why I said, hey, this is a workshop setting, and it's good to hear how you feel about it. So I know how she felt. It's good to hear from you, and I didn't want to just pull it off the table. Because look, what if it would have been pulled off the table? She didn't have the opportunity to speak. And we keep it on the table, and you still didn't get to say how you felt.
I mean, there's
So
five
this is a
highly
work-
educated people
Exactly.
in addition to Griffith and everybody else on the staff that
10,000
You know,
other people.
we put our heads together and come up with an economical way to save the city money and put that money towards something else that might be viable.
And it goes past us.
Right, exactly. It affects all of us. And on another note, looking at, and I hate to go run on, but the goals, you've got, I think, 8 or 9 setting up the budget. And I think a comment was made back at one of the CRA TIF meetings where we're trying to improve the north side, the south side. Residents are asking for funds. And then there's, let's say, $50,000 allocated in the kitty, and you've got 4 or 5 viable people that pass but we're splitting up $50,000 among 5 people, well, $10,000 isn't gonna accomplish something like that. I think maybe along these goals, where instead of having 9 or 10, we take 4 or 5 off the table and put that money to more viable programs so that more people are able to get the funds that they need, whether you put it into housing, maintenance, utilities, or something like that. I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you. That's another workshop. Thank you. Ms. Kitchen?
The leader of kitchens, 1027 South 12th Street, where I had many comments, but I reserve all of them with a couple of exceptions. The idea of the showers at Jenkins Gym, that's a brilliant idea. Hadn't thought of it. The idea of public showers for the homeless, that's ridiculous. As Mr. Griffith, I think it was, who's going to monitor it? Who's going to make sure they don't strip butt naked on the street and walk into the showers? Public nudity, who's going to ensure they don't drag somebody in there and rape them or attack them? I mean, seriously, people, get real. No public showers for the homeless, that's ridiculous. Jenkins, not a bad idea, because there will be people on staff at Jenkins when it's open. But please, no public showers for the homeless, I mean, really? And one brief thing about the housing, the CDBG has wanted to do housing repair for years. The reason we could not do it is once you get into the repair, then you have to meet the current building standards. $20 million we only cover, we have 12 applications for houses, $20 million, and we have a couple of houses. So when you want to get $490,000 to help people rehab their houses, once you get into that, the cost of rehab under the Florida Building Code, especially since Hurricane Andrew, is prohibitive. You will not be able to do that. So that's just a point of interest on a couple of things, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I can really make one more comment, just so it can be clarified. That was the public shower was used as an example. I used that as an example so you all will know that everybody should have the opportunity to continue to give input for items in school. And I would just remember well that that's one item that's on here and that person was having. Okay.
I don't know, that's why I voted, and I will say one of the things, when you have a meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the people that work don't get off of work at 5 or 6 o'clock. And workshop, a lot of times people can't appear for that. And the other thing is, if you want to have a true workshop for people to speak, and it's informal, it's got to be more than 3 minutes for them to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wouldn't shout it the word.
Anybody else?
I understand.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else?
I just got a comment real quick, but in workshops, generally, you don't give 3 minutes.
That's what I thought.
It's just open comment for the most part in workshops.
That's what I thought. So maybe we can get some clarification from legal, because I didn't know that we had, open. Yeah.
Did you say something, Ms. Thomas?
No, I didn't, but is there a question?
I didn't know that there was agreement at legal in meetings and we're in workshop on public comment. And that's why, one of the reasons I said that I wanted us to kind of come down and be in a more informal setting so that folks can feel free to come up and speak and not feel that they had 3 minutes or not have the opportunity to be able to come up and speak. So can we get some clarification on the workshop setting? Do they have a 3-minute limit? What's the process for a workshop? We have workshops for public comment and public input.
Well, there's a public comment section that's usually reserved for a 3-minute time period for each speaker. However, you can have a workshop setting where you can establish it that people can come up. Now, you have to think about if you give everybody 30 minutes, how long you're going to be in the workshop, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, it's all going to be that everybody is not going to be happy, regardless. So it's up to the commission as to how you want to run your meetings. But the public comment section is sort of separate. That's not for, it could be for things that have nothing to do with the workshop, that people just want to come up and tell you about. And then you can have a setting where you have people can come up and speak for 5 minutes. So it's up to you.
I think in our previous practices of workshops that I've sat in, we did not provide, we were considerate if a person was still making a comment to allow them the time, but I don't think the 3-minute time frame was when they came up to speak to a specific topic in our workshop. So, and that's been in the time that I've been on the commission, that we've just been flexible with regards to sometimes we've allowed it because it was a sensitive subject or things of that nature. So I think we continue to be flexible with that and not put a time frame solely on it. Just being considerate of time.
Well, I think it's something the commission has to decide, because again, most people are very considerate of everybody else and keep their comments to a shorter time, but other people do go on for a while. So I think we have to achieve that balance. Is there anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Yeah.